Hello everyone, my name is Angie and welcome back to my channel, Angie Rose Nomad. Today I have a video for you guys that is part of the March Mystery Madness videos that I wanted to do on this channel before my little bit of a break. And that video is going to be all about books that are based off of true crime cases. This is in no means an all-encompassing list. I believe I have 6 books here. So if you know of any off of the top of your head, please feel free to let me know down in the comments below. The first 3 books that I'm going to be sharing with you guys are 3 books that I have personally read, and the entire time I was reading them, I was thinking to myself, this is definitely this case, or this is definitely this case, something along those lines. I believe the first book I'm going to talk about needs no introduction, but that would be Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. So this follows the story of a married couple, Nick and Amy, and on their 5-year wedding anniversary, Amy goes missing. So we're following Nick and the investigation as it is progressing. Now, Nick is very bitter and very evasive. He doesn't really want to be around the media, and he seems like he has something to hide. And through a series of diary entries, we also get what was going on in Amy's life shortly before her disappearance. So while I was reading this book, I could not stop drawing parallels to the Scott and Lacey Peterson case. Now, Lacey Peterson was a pregnant woman who went missing from Modesto, California around December 24th, I think was the exact date, Christmas Eve. And her husband, Scott, was very evasive. He didn't want to be in front of cameras. He was hiding something. And boy, was he hiding something, because he was having an affair with a woman named Amber Fry, who would eventually come to his trial and be essentially the nail in the coffin. She was a huge witness for the prosecution in that case. And yes, Scott did go to trial on the charges of murdering his wife and unborn son, Connor, and was sentenced to death in California. So the next book I want to talk about is With Malus by Eileen Cook. This follows the story of a girl named Jill who has gone on this class trip to Italy. And she wakes up in a hospital surrounded by a press team and security and lawyers because there's been an accident. See, Jill finds out that she was involved in a fatal car crash that has killed her best friend, Simone, and she cannot remember the past 6 weeks of her life. But one thing Jill knows for sure is that she could never intentionally harm Simone. She was her best friend. They were so close. However, the media is trying to portray her as this jealous monster that wanted revenge after all these years of Simone being in the spotlight. So we follow Jill as she's trying to piece together the last 6 weeks of her life and find out what really happened that night. The true crime case that this reminded me of would be the trial of Amanda Knox. So Amanda Knox was an American student who went to study abroad in Italy. And while she was there, she got a share house with 3 other girls. One of them was a British foreign exchange student by the name of Meredith Kircher. So while Amanda was in Italy, she met and began a relationship with a man named Raffaele Sollecito. Now, one day she returned to her flat after an evening at Raffaele's to discover that her roommate Meredith Kircher had been murdered. The media was relentless in this case. They were digging into Amanda's past, calling her a cold-blooded killer. They were dragging her name through the mud. No focus on Meredith, hardly at all. It was mainly the story of Amanda Knox. So Amanda and Raffaele were both found guilty in the Italian court system. Now, how it works over there, from what I have read and watched, is that when you get your sentence, there is automatically a review trial, essentially. So Amanda and Raffaele's conviction of guilt is not definitive. They would go and do a separate case just to make sure. So they went and did this separate case, and they were acquitted of the charges. However, just 2 years following that, they would throw that acquittal out and do another trial, because in the acquittal trial, as I will call it, they did not look at circumstantial evidence, and they did not require new DNA tests to be done. And in this trial, Amanda and Raffaele were found guilty again. 2 years later, they would exhaust their final appeal with the Supreme Court, where they were definitively acquitted of the murder of Meredith Kercher. There is a Netflix documentary on this case called Amanda Knox, which is pretty well done, and there are numerous other sources that you guys can go check out if you are interested in more about this case. Next up, we have The Girls by Emma Cline. This takes place in the 1960s in California and follows the story of Evie Boyd, who sees this group of girls at the park one day, and she is entranced by them immediately, especially by an older girl by the name of Susanna. So the girls take Evie back to this ranch house where they all live, and she gets to meet the charismatic leader of the group. And things kind of spiral from there, leading her to fatal consequences, if you will. This book strongly reminds me of the Manson family and the Manson family murders, where they killed an actress named Sharon Tate and several other people, along with arson and vandalism, things along those lines. So essentially the Manson family was very cult-like, and their leader was Charles Manson. They all lived together on this one property and took drugs and followed Manson and whatever he said to do, which would eventually lead several of these group members to commit murder. The last 3 books that I have to share with you guys, I have not personally read yet. I came across them in my research, and 2 of them I am very interested in, so I'm going to save those for last and talk about the one that I might pick up but not too sure about. That is The Perfect Nanny, and this is by Leila Slimani, translated by Sam Taylor. So there's a woman named Miriam who has just decided to return to work as a lawyer after her children have been born, and she has a son and daughter, I believe. And her husband want to look for the perfect nanny for her children. They eventually find Louise. Louise is very polite and devoted to the children. She cleans their Parisian apartment. She doesn't mind staying late. So this dependency between Louise and the parents kind of forms. And I guess the book is looking at that. But in the very beginning of the book, we find out that Louise has murdered the children. That is not a spoiler. I found it in multiple different places. So I guess it's more like taking a journey and seeing what happened to lead to that point. The case that this was based off of was the case of Lucia and Leo Krem. Now, Lucia was 6 years old and Leo was 2. And they were both murdered on October 25th of 2012 by their caretaker, a woman named Yoselin Ortega. The children's mother and 3-year-old sister were a couple blocks away at a swimming lesson, I believe, and Yoselin was eventually convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder and 2 counts of second-degree murder. So next we need to talk about Kevin by Lionel Shriver. This follows the story of a woman named Eva who has wanted children for quite some time. Now eventually she has a son named Kevin, and she is trying to come to terms with what happens when the son that she has always wanted turns out to do unspeakable things. You see, Kevin has murdered 7 of his fellow classmates along with a teacher and a cafeteria worker just a few days before his 16th birthday. So Eva is looking back on things and trying to come to terms with what happened. The true crime story that this is inspired by is the Columbine school shooting, which took place on April 20th? Yes, April 20th of 1999. Where 2 students walked into the school and massacred 12 of their classmates along with a teacher. This makes me very interested, and we need to talk about Kevin. I have listened and read several things with Sue, one of the shooter's mothers, and she is a very interesting woman. She has a way of speaking that really makes you think about things, and I believe it was Sue that said, everyone just kind of ostracizes you as a parent when everyone is going up to other people and saying, we are so sorry about your loss. And she just kind of like, what about me? Like, granted, I know my son did this horrendous thing, but I lost my kid. And I didn't know he was planning this. You know, how would you feel if your son or daughter did this? Would you claim that you had no idea, like you're accusing me of? Or things like that. And it just really makes you think, like, yes, these people have done horrible things, but what ramifications are there for those that are left behind? You know, parents don't always know exactly what's going on in their children's lives, and this was back in the 1990s where things were way more lax than they are now. So just being able to read about the perspective of the quote-unquote villain in a novel will be something very interesting from my perspective. And then the last book has actually been made into a movie, and I have seen the movie. I have not read the book quite yet. I'm going to for sure. And it is Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. We follow the story of Detective Hercule Poirot as he embarks on the Orient Express, and there are several different passengers going with him to his final destination. However, sometime during the middle of the night, this extremely unlikable character is murdered, and he is trying to figure out what happened. So if you have seen the movie or read the book, there is another mystery that has kind of the base of our story, if you will, the foundation, why things happen, things like that. So Agatha Christie was inspired to write this novel based on the Lindbergh baby kidnapping and murder that happened in 1932, where the son of the famous aviator Charles Lindbergh was kidnapped from his home on March 1st, and on March 12th his body was found, and he was 20 months old. So let me know if you guys have read any of these, or if you have read any other novels that you believe are based on a true crime case. I love seeing where authors get their inspiration from, and I am very interested in true crime. So when I first started reading these books, the first three that I mentioned, I thought to myself, whoa, hold up, I know this case. I know this case. Like Gone Girl, I read that so many years ago, but just, it kept me hooked, not only because of the story, but because I felt like I was so familiar with it. So I think that does it for this video. As always, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked it, please let me know by giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to become part of the tribe if you have not already. I make new bookish videos every Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday, so I will see you very soon. Bye!